Hello, and welcome to The Source Within with Chloe Pedalino, where I share the source within me with hopes it sparks the source within thee. Hello, and welcome to The Source Within with Chloe Pedalino, where I am joined with Andrea Blythe of Let Love Rise. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. Love this.
And Andrea Blythe is also my retreat co-host in Teotihuacan, Mexico, September 19th through 25th. Check out show notes and letloverise.com for more information about the retreat and where you can sign up. And last time I had you on here, we were talking about Toltec history, Toltec mythology, etc. We had intended to get towards the Toltec wisdom and teachings that have become so well known through Don Miguel Ruiz, but we didn't quite get there. So we are going to be talking about those today. And just to give a little bit of background on Don Miguel Ruiz, who actually is a doctor himself, he is a Toltec. And his mother was a curandera, which is a healer, and his father was a nagal, who is a shaman. And he has dedicated his life to promoting and teaching and sharing and spreading the Toltec wisdom throughout the world. And one of his great books is The Four Agreements. So I just wanted to talk a little bit more about that because there's such profound teachings that are, I think, really relatable, really simple, and like really, really foundational. And my first introduction to this was my mom actually gave me a book when I was in my early 20s in college and said, I think you're now ready to have this information, and I think you're now at a point to appreciate it. And
That's so
I'm so grateful that she did. And it was a great gift, and I really recommend it to other people, both in my professional and personal life. But anyways, I'm so glad we can connect about it. And I know you are just as passionate about that as
I'm trying to remember when, this is a book that I give regularly to people. I know, interestingly enough, because I just had a group that we read through the Four Agreements in the month of May in my Soul Growth Book Club. And my mom, when she was finding her book, there's an inscription from me. So it was the opposite. It was a Mother's Day gift that I gave to my mom back in 2013, I think it was, because I had just read through it. And I cannot remember how it came into my world. All I know is that it profoundly affected me the first time I read it. And then it was one of those books that was put on the shelf, but it was like, I don't part with this book. And every year since that I've read it, I have like different color pens for all the underlinings of it. Yes, that are, and I write in the margin now, like I put like, if it was read in 2022, I'll put that down. Like, this is what resonated with me this year. And then when you read it again, you can see like, your own growth and evolution through these very four simple principles that are way more complex. It's something that I gift to myself now once a year to read through it. And it just to remind myself, because there are certain agreements that are more challenging for various individuals for various reasons. Like for me, one of the ones that I've been working through is that second agreement on not taking things personally. And
so why don't we show, I'm gonna actually read off the agreements just to start reading, and then you can continue on, but I just want to give people a framework of what they are. So the first agreement is be impeccable with your word. Second, don't take anything personally. Third, don't make assumptions. And fourth, always do your best. Okay. And go ahead. Take it away.
Simple enough, right? Simple enough. And not simple enough, because when you don't take anything personally, you can get that. And I think that this is part of why we are drawn to doing retreats, is because it's moving something out of the head space and pulling it into the heart space. And so this whole not taking it personally, this wisdom is, I can understand it, and it still has like unpacking
Harder
to
for
be
you.
done to see like, where did that come from? Why, when did it
Mm,
matter to me that what other people were thinking? And to the sense I was so off balance in my life, and this is my story, and it's written about on through Let Love Rise and this new creation, my work, is because I gave all, I want to say almost nearly all of my power away to
mm,
others that I was in relationship with, but I cared more about what other people thought about me than how
mhm,
I was doing within myself. And so
mhm.
of course you take it personally when somebody, and then it's just like recognizing it's like, okay, it's not personal. They're doing their best and whatever level of their best is, and they're also in their own place and in their own
World.
head. Like we're all kind of all of
Yeah.
our lives
Uh-huh.
are processing through our own being, and so it's not it's not about you, like that's basically what it is. But it's really not about you. But what are you going to do? How are you going to sit with this feeling, and how do you want to respond, and what's yours and what's not yours? It's
Well, I think
clean it.
so. So a little bit of what you're referring to and might help other people understand this concept of not taking things personally. So yeah,
Mhm.
you touched on a lot of things, which is like the judgments of others,
Yeah,
how others perceived, which
yeah,
that really comes through social conditioning that we're taught
yes,
that it matters,
yep,
what other people
yep.
think. And so that's one aspect of it. But going back to in the previous episode, we talked about this idea of dreaming that not Don Miguel Ruiz talks about, but also I just said that with like a French accent. Weird. But in the Toltec philosophies about this idea of dreaming
Mm,
and that we are
awakening.
all creating our dream during our day. It's not just when we're sleeping, but our lives are our dreams. We are creating our dreams. And so the other thing aspect of thinking that way though is that we all can only exist within our own perceptions.
Exactly.
We have to recognize that everything is through a lens and it's only through our own existence
Yep.
and it's only through our own lens. How we perceive
Yeah.
is through all the other stuff and experiences and indoctrinations and programming and these kinds of things. So my lens, my filter is
Hmm.
going to be different than your lens and your
Exactly.
filter, and it's going to be
Yeah.
different than the neighbors and
Right.
the next person.
Right.
And so you can't what somebody else's interpretation,
Yeah.
response, what have you, is only through their filter. You cannot
Yes.
control that. And
Yes.
so the only thing you can control is your own perception and is your
Yes.
own thinking.
Yes.
And so, if you're getting to a point where you're noticing or taking things personally, or you're saying, oh, their action,
Hmm.
them parking in that parking spot,
Right.
does that have anything to do with you or does it not have anything to do with it?
No.
That's something that you have to
Yeah. Yep.
monitor for yourself. And in going to the fourth agreement, I heard you say, going to the fourth agreement with always do your best with the mindset that, oh, okay, you know what? Everybody's doing their best.
At
Who knows what's going
varying
on in their
levels,
life?
right? And their best might not match like what you think their best can be, should be, just to throw out that like that supercharged word should, like, but what we think that other people should be doing, like it's like no, 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 no. And those ones really go in hand when we recognize that people do not act the way that we would act in a situation. And so it's our work to accept fully the other person, whether it's the driver who took the parking spot or whether it's your sister who, said something that was really painful, and she probably never even thought about it. It's like how to step out of that and let other people be fully themselves in their full autonomy, and you be fully in yourself and your autonomy. And that, I mean, that practice of not taking it personally just has so many levels. I mean, that's for me personally. What was interesting in my book club group, there are other people that were just, they had no problem with that agreement. And
Yeah.
the one for them was making assumptions. That
Mhm.
number, that third one is like not making assumptions about what people will say, will do, won't do. I
Yeah.
mean, how often do we change our action based on thinking about what the other person may or may not do? It's like, whoa,
Yeah.
that's another whole That's another whole level. So again, super simple principle. Don't make assumptions. Don't take things personally. Always do your best. Be impeccable with your word. But the
Mhm.
profundity of this wisdom
Yeah,
is so great, and it's a constant reminder. And so I love reading through this book in community, and I love pulling people together like we're going to be doing in Teo, to have people together to discuss these really profound principles, but how important they can guide us. And when we can talk about it with other people, to be like, even within the confines of these four agreements, there are ones that are going to affect me that
sure.
are not going
Everyone's
to
gonna
have
have
as
different
strong of an
experiences.
effect on you. And it's like, huh. And that's another like little like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
Again, once again, not everybody is like you. Actually, nobody is like you. And yet everybody
sure.
is like you. It's the whole everything everywhere
Yeah.
all at once kind of idea. But it's
Right.
really,
Well, we're all created of the same, but our
yeah,
expressions are different. So
yeah.
yeah, and not make assumptions. And just to speak to that one a little bit short, like, assumptions, that's definitely one that I work on a regular basis. And
Mm. Hmm.
assumptions, I think it can be a fine line because there can be an aspect of a predictability
Yeah,
there. So,
right.
you could think of like, okay, but I think about it for myself as there's an aspect that I will predict people's behaviors, and what that comes from. Is it an aspect of wanting to be in control, perhaps?
Yeah.
And,
Mm.
you
Mm.
know, and what that can be. I'm bringing this up because other people might experience this too. There's also an aspect that can be related to trauma. It's like if we can
Yeah.
predict, then we
Yeah.
feel safer, or we think
Yeah.
we will feel
Yeah.
safer. Not that we ever really can predict, which is the whole thing, which is the whole
I
principle,
know,
which is the whole thing.
right? Like
Don't
that.
make the assumptions, but I also want to share that, like, there can be a protective mechanism of why people anticipate other people's behaviors, thoughts, and feelings.
Absolutely.
So
Oh,
be
in a
aware of
protective
that
way. Mm.
and recognize that there can be an aspect of that. Okay, that's serving something for me.
Yeah.
Maybe that's something to work out
Well,
in therapy. Maybe it's something I can
yeah.
just observe and manage myself. But
Right.
that can then lead to this idea of making assumptions. And when
Yeah.
we make
Yeah.
assumptions, then because we can't predict the future,
Can
that
cause
also can
miscommunications
it can
galore
lead.
arise out of that. I mean, and hurt. And sometimes it's just very unnecessarily we put ourselves into situations and scenarios, life circumstances that bring on the hurt because we made an erroneous assumption instead of
Mm,
having that impeccability with your word, just to be like, okay, well, what is it that I want to say? What is it that I'm desiring to communicate in this situation? And what will it feel
Or
like
is it asking though? Because an assumption isn't about you're communicating. The assumption is there something to ask? Rather
mm,
than
sure.
rather than assuming how somebody thinks, feels, believes, or why
Yeah,
they did
you
that
gotta,
behavior,
yeah.
you must ask them. And then,
Exactly.
right.
And the best way to do that is to have that clarity, that going back to that first agreement of being impeccable with your word and knowing what it is that you are like, because sometimes we don't even know that we're making assumptions. Like there's so many things that we just do on autopilot, which is what he says,
Sure,
awakening to the dream. Like
sure.
we are the powerful co-creators of our life. What we think manifests it in one way or another. So the more intentionality we have around it, the more that we bring
Yeah.
our attention fully into the things that we think, the words that we say, how we communicate with others, just the more ease we're going to experience, the more joy we're going to experience in our life, the more our capacity to love and to be compassionate is going to just expand um,
Yeah.
when we ground into
Yeah.
really, yeah,
Yeah,
taking
and
that.
I think you brought up a good point, and Don Miguel Ruiz talks about this. It is that intentionality, and it is that awareness.
100%.
And so, what I like about
100%.
these principles, also the book is a little tiny short read. So for anyone who's like not a
Small.
big reader, I'm
No.
it's gulp size.
I love
Um,
that. It's gulp
yeah,
size.
but the intentionality, right? And so, you were saying like an awakening from what's going on, and the awakening is like, oh wait, what I say and think and do, etc., does have impact. And
Yes.
so I like that the book puts these things as so simple as guides of values that we and things that we can work on. And
Yeah.
just by knowing them, I hope that just by planting the seed for people today in this episode, this just in and of itself naturally helps you to just become more aware of, hey, okay, am I taking things personally here? Okay. Noticing, okay, wow, I noticed that I make a lot of assumptions. I think I know what people are thinking and believing and feeling, but do I have any confirmation? Have I even asked them? Have I even checked in with them on these? Do I have any information to support this? Where am I
Right.
getting these
Yeah.
beliefs
Yeah.
from? You know, this sort of thing. And then,
And then wrapping yourself in grace with that last, I just feel like that last agreement is just like a blanket of grace that you wrap around yourself. It's like, always do your best. I'm doing my best in this moment. Like where I am today to where I was 4 summers ago, the best that I could do 4 summers ago is vastly different than the best that I could do today. And so it's like this beautiful, comforting way of just saying, hey, I'm I'm at the moment, I am going to do my best effort to integrate these other agreements. And if I made an assumption, if I took something personally, I'm going to reflect on that and proceed, like put it in the learning belt. It's like, okay,
right,
now I know better, I
right.
do better, and I am doing my best. And I'm going to
Yeah.
get up tomorrow with a new sunrise, and I'm going to do my best again. And it might be better. I mean, hopefully it is, right? That is part of the journey through life, is that hopefully we learn from all the experiences and we learn from the mistakes that we made. And we are humans. We are having this human experience. And so we are not going to walk through life perfectly. We are going to make assumptions, and we are going to fall, and we're going to get back up again, maybe a little bit stronger and a little bit wiser. And that's why this book, this gulp-sized book, I love that, can be read like on an annual basis every 5 years. It's just kind of like a,
It's a go-to. It's a go-to to check in with
is.
yourself and like measure, like, okay, how am I doing on
Absolutely.
these? Because these are
Yeah.
they're just core ways to live by that are like
Yeah.
lifelong ways to live by. And
Yeah.
the one other thing, another thing I want to mention about the always do your best, because I think this is an important, especially in current society when we have so much social media and we have so much input, and so much possibility for comparison.
Yeah.
The important thing here is that always do your best is not in comparison to others. It's not, you're not judging. There's a really important aspect here that your best is not to be measured, by how you judge yourself in comparison to other people and their experiences or what have you.
It's not be the best. It says do your best, not be the best. Like, yes, that competitive, comparative edge is super important. Thank you for.
Or just judging yourself against somebody else. So that's a really important thing. It's your best is something that you only know within your own self what your best is. And you said hopefully you're doing better today than yesterday. Sure, it's also taking into account like doing your best on any given day, whatever those circumstances present in that moment, so it's not just like it has to be one direct linear trajectory.
It's not necessarily like that graph line that is going to go.
Exactly.
It's definitely more of a zigzag. And
and you compare against your own self, and it's just your own knowing of, are you
super important to distinguish, right? Because it is very noisy, and the comparison culture is toxic.
Beyond.
And it's not like when we're doing our best, like, and I can fall easily into that space, and that agreement does. That's why, again, I just feel it like such a blanket of love and grace of just saying, like, you are doing your best with what you have, where you are. And that is more than enough. So just breathe, plant your feet in the grass, connect up to the wisdom of the stars, look out, find Orion.
Right.
Find the wisdom keepers, find these ancient places that just ground you into like, I'm okay in this moment. I'm okay. And I'm,
And then lastly, we are going opposite direction, but I'll just lastly speak to the first one, which is be impeccable with your word. And I mean, this is one that it reiterates it. It's similar to so many of teachings, which is, paying attention to your thoughts and your words and what you're writing and what you're putting out there, because essentially What you are putting out there is going to return to you. You and I did an episode on this a while. Yep, exactly. On law of attraction is another way to think about this one, and why he is saying be so impeccable with your word, because again, what your word is going to come back to you. So when he's saying be impeccable with your word, that's what they're referring to. And I love his phrasing of it. It's like a softer, it just isn't, I just like it. Be
Well, it's
impeccable with your
impeccable.
word.
It's like such a well-chosen word. It's very
True.
clean. It's very pure. It's just like,
Yes.
and so much of us, like, you know, that old childhood, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That we all know that is like the biggest lie. Well, one of the biggest lies of childhood, that words will never hurt me, when words can be so piercing, and they can be used for harm against others, but mostly how we speak to ourselves, and the words that we use, and the power of getting really clear with our communication. And I was saying that one of the biggest takeaways for me was eliminating sarcasm. I had been brought up in kind of a sarcastic environment, and I love humor. I think it's so fun. But then I started, when I was in a really wounded place, and there were some sarcastic comments that like came to me. I was like, wait, but what do you actually mean? And I realized that there was confusion in that. It was about the time that one of the times I was rereading it. And also, how do I do that? How do I use sarcasm? And then be like, well, what am I actually trying to say here? You know, because it's just like automatic, like, oh, and I'm going to go for the light laugh because, oh, it's actually uncomfortable. You want to say something that's uncomfortable. So you're going to make a comment that has like this backward, like a backhanded, like slap in a way where it's just like, oh, what I really want to say is this. And that's not an automatic, or it wasn't for me an automatic practice. I have been working, I would say 7 years on that now, just like putting that out of the way that I use it. And I just try to be more and more impeccable. I'm verbose, but I try to be
Sure.
clear on what I'm saying, and not say one thing, but really have this underlying something.
Being more intentional.
Yes. Yeah.
Being more intentional, like actually saying, and being impeccable with your word, actually saying what you mean, rather than like this roundabout, confusing, backhanded kind of
because
way.
it makes you feel better, or possibly because you're making an assumption that that person's going to react this way, or that that they're going to say something, and you're going to, I mean, all these 4 agreements, just they're pillars. I see them as pillars, but like one without the other, like they all work together in a very simplistic and very profound way. So
absolutely, I agree. So again, they are: number 1, be impeccable with your word. Number 2, don't take anything personally. Number 3, don't make assumptions. And number 4, always do your best. Those are the Toltec Wisdom 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And so grateful that he has shared those with the world and shared these teachings, because they have made such an impact on both of our lives. And we know that they have the potential to do it on other people's lives. So thanks so much for being here today and having this conversation with me about the 4 agreements.
Well, and I'm looking forward to continuing this conversation, not just here today, for sure, at our retreat in Teotihuacan, but all the way up and through and beyond, because these are principles that just deserve a revisit regularly. And so there's so much more. I feel like we just scratched the surface of the profundity of this. And it's like one of these things that I can go on and on, sister.
Go on and on. All right. Well,
and
speaking of that, if people want to connect with you or reach out to you, where can they reach you?
LetLoveRise.com is the best way. Instagram, I'm on Let Love Rise. Andrea Blythe over on Facebook. Would love to connect and help support you on your journey back to your authentic joy.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being here. And also they can find the retreat information also at letloverise.com.
Letloverise.com, and we'll also put the direct link to the Equinox experience.
Yes, the Equinox experience in Teotihuacan, Mexico, which is the foundation of the Toltec civilization and these principles that we just talked about today. So looking
Go
forward
feel
to,
it and experience it. Cannot wait.
yes,
And
cannot wait.
cannot wait to see who joins our tribe.
Yes, looking forward to it. All right. Thanks so much, Andy. I'll see you here next time.
All right. Awesome. Thanks.
I just wanted to share and put on your radar that I am co-hosting a retreat with Andrea Blythe of Let Love Rise in Teotihuacan, Mexico, which is about 50 miles north of Mexico City. And in Teotihuacan, there's this incredible pyramid complex of 3 pyramids. One's a pyramid of the sun, one's a pyramid of the moon. And the fascinating thing about these incredible temples, and I mean, they're beautiful, they're intact, they're really magnificent, likely attributed to the Mayans is the going theory here. But what's really incredible about these temples is that the complex is actually a mirror configuration of Pleiades, Taurus, and Orion. And the ley lines of Teotihuacan are very similar to those in Jerusalem, on the Mount of Jerusalem, as well as there's some correlation with Giza and the pyramids in Egypt, which those were also built in alignment with these star systems. So there's a lot of connection there. It's a really profound, incredible place. And so we'll be checking out the pyramids, but doing so much more than just that. There's also incredible, amazing natural springs in other areas of Mexico we're going to be checking out. We're going to be staying at this lovely resort with local foods and nourishment, and it's really going to be a great time. We're doing some energy work to balance ourselves on this. It's going to be during the equinox, which is on the 22nd of September, and the fall equinox is when we're transitioning from summer into fall, and it is a time of balance because there is both equal sun and there is equal dark, equal light and equal dark on the equinox. And so it can be a really powerful time to both heal oneself and also to grow and to develop. So I really hope you will join us on this awesome trip, September 19th through the 25th. And really, it's going to be a mixture of a lot of things. There's going to be healing, there's going to be adventure, there's going to be growth, there's going to be spiritual and energetic work and alignment. So really excited to have y'all join us there. Check out more on my website at the-sourcewithin.com.